available to users to investigate things like the LexisNexis database or JSTOR. There also might be lists of IT services that your IT department would like to make available so that users can find out what the breadth of resources that are available through IT. Software would also fall under that general category. You also might have course lists, department lists, faculty and staff lists. There basically is a lot of, beyond just the normal kind of page content type on a higher ed website, we often see a lot of lists and presentation of complex information. One of the hallmarks of a complex content type is that there can be a lot of associated information. There can be various categorization schemes and taxonomies, metadata that's used to connect and explain and filter this content. There can be a lot of other kinds of fields, like a faculty content type might have the position in the university, the department, maybe lists of research or webinars or course presentations. Each piece of content can have just a ton of information associated with it. This can be very confusing to users. But the other hallmark of this is that users can often be confused about what these content types are in the first place. And this is something we've discovered in our testing. Something like a research database, to even explain to a user what this represents can be very complicated. So they're coming to this list of complex content without a lot of intuition about what they're looking at in the first place. And that's a real challenge for us. So to understand how to tackle this challenge, let's start with information architecture. This is something that's a part of any website process here at iFactory. It's one of the initial stages after discovery where we learn about what your users and what the requirements on your site are from the perspective, internal perspective and external perspective. The next step is to really structure your information, come up with a way of thinking about your information which allows us to build out a site using it. That's what information architecture is. And there's a lot of documentation that goes into the information architecture process, but the hallmark of information architecture, kind of the centerpiece, is the wireframe. And I thought we would just start by taking a look at this wireframe. This is from an in-progress project here at iFactory for the Eastern Virginia Medical School. This is a wireframe for a listing page on the site which is listing faculty and staff. So the part of this page that we're really interested in today is the central and right-hand area where the faculty and staff are actually listed. And as you can see, this is really a framework or a blueprint for the information. It is not strongly correlated with the design, and that can be a little challenging to get used to. We are not creating a white, black, and blue website for the EVMS. This is a blueprint for the site that we're creating. Design happens at a later stage. So let's talk a little bit about the elements of this wireframe and how they relate to our conversation. So the most important aspect of information architecture with regard to complex content is using a consistent and highly structured layout. So taking a look at this wireframe, what I mean by that is that as you look at each faculty member on this page, every piece of information that we're going to display to illustrate, to basically every associated piece of information for a faculty or staff member is placed in the same position on the page. So there's a repetitive pattern, and this repetitive pattern of information is very important for a user scanning down the page and finding something they're interested in. If we put the first name always in the top left corner, then a user has an easier opportunity to scan down that page looking for the first name or looking for the last name, looking at what a particular title or role might be within within the long list of content on this page. So the consistent layout, the structured layout, is really critical when we have a complex list of content. The next element of information architecture that I'd like to discuss is the terms that we use to refer to our information. Oftentimes I see that the terms we use internally to describe our information is not the same term that people use externally. So we may have a human resources kind of feel for how we talk about our information, or a marketing feel, or an IT feel, but our users aren't in our culture, and they may use different terms than we do. So this is an opportunity with information architecture to start thinking very specifically about the terms that we use, what we put on the page to help our users understand what the information we're showing them represents. And an example of that in the EVMS wireframes would be the choice of the terms title, role, focus area, current projects. Those are all tested to make sure that the way they're referred to, that what the users think they mean is what they really mean. And oftentimes, if we use a like a human resources term like position, it may not carry the same meaning for us that we want users to take away from it. And the next element of information architecture that I'd like to highlight is having users' expectations about how they interact with a page being met. So when a user comes to our website and takes an action, and even an action as simple as hovering over something, certainly clicking on a link, clicking on a term, what the user expects to happen is what should happen. And this has actually been shown by research to be the most important thing to not frustrate users. Oftentimes we see people say that it takes too many clicks to get from point A to point B. Our users are getting frustrated because they have to click 3 or 4 or 5 times to get to something they're interested in doing. And it turns out that users don't really mind a lot of clicks. What they mind is confusing clicks. When they feel like they can't follow a natural pathway to get from point A to point B. And that's about providing expected interactions so that the page, as it's presenting information, guides the user into making the correct choice about what will happen next. And we can see an example of that in the EVMS wireframes over on the right-hand side. As you can tell, there's a little bit of an icon for the mouse cursor, and when it's indicating that when you hover over the video, it shows you the video title and duration and a help tag. Now that information could be presented immediately under the video. It would tend to make the page busy and kind of clutter it up with additional information, but users expect with image or video assets that if they hover over them, they will get a little bit more additional information. That's a common interaction on the web. It's part of what people expect, and we take advantage of that here by providing information in that same format. So you may have heard me within this conversation about information architecture, you may have heard me talk about testing. This is a critical piece of information architecture. Even the most intuitive, correct, view of our users can't capture what's really going to work without it being tested against reality. There's a ton of different kinds of tests that can be done. It can be a very formal and structured process. It can be a very informal process. It can be done hiring an outside consultant like iFactory. But I also want to point out that it's something that you can do internally within your institution. And in particular, this is a book that I and our RIA here at iFactory really wanted to put in front of you as a great choice. Rocket Surgery Made Easy. It's a book that IAs turn to for themselves. It's got a lot of great advice. And it's really, as it says, it's a do-it-yourself guide to fixing usability questions. So I would encourage you, really even in just a small way, if there's an area of your site that you feel isn't meeting your users' needs, isn't presenting information clearly, you can sort of take on a small-scale IA project with in-house usability testing and try to solve some of those problems yourself. I think it's a great approach. Okay, so now what we're talking about is presenting complex information. We've discussed how you can use information architecture to lay out and present the information from a blueprint standpoint so as to make it more clear. The next tool in our arsenal is graphic design, and actually the title is supposed to be graphic design comes next. I'm sorry that the next word seems to have been chopped off. But so the idea here is that after we've come up with a very tight layout with a place for each piece of information, we can use color and font and spacing to add even further readability to this information. And I think we're all familiar of the use of graphic design for branding. It's very clear that graphic design can convey a message to our users, a branding message about our institution. As I came into web development, and I didn't come from an art background, I come from a technical background, I was really not aware of the extent to which graphic design has a huge impact on the readability of complex information. And this is something that we deploy across a wide variety of websites at iFactory, from a higher ed website to a publishing website to a commercial website. Everybody on some section of their website has difficult to parse information that is lots of content on it, and how can we use principles of graphic design so that the user, as they're scanning the page, can find the content that's relevant to them. And one of the things actually I really love is having a page be almost there, like if it's a B+ sort of graphic presentation, and then watching a graphic designer come in and just increase one font a little bit in size, or add a little bit of leading between some lines. Those little tweaks can make a really big difference in the human ability to scan the page. The second thing that's really important with graphic design, and here's where Drupal becomes a very helpful tool, is after we've designed the page and locked down how we want it to be presented, we need to have our content management system configured so that users are restricted to the palette of styling that we've decided. And this is true for both the placement of information and the styling of information. The content management system for a complex content type cannot present just a large WYSIWYG editor that a user starts to type the information in. There need to be separate fields for each piece of content so that all of our hard work about where the first name should go, where should we list the videos, what font should we use for the labels on terms like role and title. All of those choices need to be enforced by the content management system. And an example of what this looks like when we're done is this page from the Northeastern University Library. It's a site that we completed in January of this year. This is a page which lists their research databases, and I think it's a really good example of how graphic design can be used to make it easier to look at a page with a lot of information on it. And we're going to keep coming back to this page. This is going to be our main example for the rest of the webinar, how our research databases handled on the Northeastern University Library site. So just as we're looking at it now for the first time, let me point out to you that the titles are all in red. So it is, if all you're interested in is the title, it is very easy to scan the page and just see Academic OneFile, Academic Search Premier. They really pop out at you. There's a little bit of space below the title before we get to the metadata, the subject, and the access. There's some use of icons. There's various other aspects of the design that we're going to kind of go into more detail on future slides. So let's dig into some of the tools that we use to make this page easier to scan. The first tool I'd like to discuss is JavaScript blinds. Complex content types, by definition, really have a lot of content. And the challenge here is that when a user is looking at this content, they may not care about all of it. So we have to think through and test what pieces of this content are interesting to a user when they are looking at a list. So in this, let's go to the actual site running in my browser. This is the same page we were looking at before. That's a screenshot. If we look at this A to Z index of the research databases, we see that the more info is closed. And if I click on that, it will open up and show a little more information. And I'm going to open a few of them to illustrate a point I want you to see. As I have multiple ones of these open, can you see how the page just gets a lot harder to scan? As we add more and more content onto the page, the high-level information, the title, the taxonomy, the information about how it's available, these all get watered down by the additional information. So it's often very helpful with a complex content type to put your content in two groups, to have the information you want to list and then the information that you want to hide and only make available if a user shows more interest. In Drupal, this can be achieved at the theme layer. This is the code that was used to create this effect for the Northeastern University Library site. It's kind of a two-part system where we make it, this is Drupal 7, by the way, where we make a template file that lays out how the information will be shown on the page. It's this accordion right down here that is where the hidden information is shown. JavaScript acts on the accordion to have the show a hide effect. And it's in the template file that we set up the more info variable, the content that we want to stick inside the accordion. So it's kind of a two-part effort where the template does the logic, populates the variables, figures out how things should be put together, and it's the template that actually puts it on the page, presents the information that the template.php assembled for it. Going back to the effect of that code, what we get is that this information, the further information, which includes the paragraph describing the research database, as well as additional taxonomy like detailed subjects, these wind up being hidden when you load the page. And the purpose of that is to allow a user to scan the page and get to see only the top level information and then easily dive in without having to leave the page to get further information. The next tool that we used to reduce the amount of information that we actually had to print on the page was using icons. And this is another attempt to remove text from the page. The less text, the easier it is to scan a long list of complex information. So going back to the page itself, there's two different ways we use icons here. We use icons in conjunction with text. So here we have a small mobile icon and a go to mobile site link. And if you scroll down the page, you'll see that that's repeated in various places. Now, we're including the words go to mobile site, so those words are on the page. On the other hand, as you scroll down the page, it's very easy to sort of catch the ones that use that icon. The icons stand out more than the text do, so they allow you to scroll down and catch sight of ones if you're interested in a mobile site. The other way that we use icons is over on the right-hand side, where we have a set of icons that represent the type of content that can be found. There's sound ones. I know there's a video one somewhere on this page. See if I can scroll faster and find it. I guess that's music, and there's video. So that's a different icon set. Here we use it as a way to substitute for words. The icons themselves are a little bit more recognizable as what they represent. So they serve the function they need to simply by being there without any further explanation. So this shows you that there are quite a few ways that you can use icons to remove some excess info on the page. And one of the things I want to kind of emphasize about icons is they don't necessarily need to be a perfect picture of what they're representing. Sometimes people can get hung up on the sort of high-level styling of these icons. So take a look at this mobile phone. I don't think that that's, I think maybe it's 32 pixels or 16 pixels square. It's not a Rembrandt version of a mobile phone. It's really just a sketch, but it's just enough so that as the user scans the page, they know what they're going to get by clicking on that link. It's giving the user information about what the link will do. And the next method that we used to remove excess information on this page was the linking intuitively. And this is something that's a little different for this particular list than other lists we've created. Usually if you're on a list like this, and perhaps it's news items, or maybe it's upcoming events, or it could be faculty on the site. Normally when you click on the title, you get taken out to the full page that represents that content. If you're on a list of news items and you click on the title, you expect to see the entire news article represented with all of its information. With research databases, that wasn't actually the expected behavior. We found that when users see a list like this and they click on this link, what they expected is to be taken to the research database itself. So this was a very interesting thing to learn, and it also is really helpful because it means that we don't, in addition, need to present the link, the title. We don't need to present the outgoing link in another place in its information. We don't have to present a click here for the Chronicle of Higher Education online. It's good enough to just link the title. In fact, it's better to just link the title. So this was a way to a very creative way to reduce the information we needed to present about each research database. We could combine the title and the outgoing link. So these are some of the ways that we can architect and design and use some techniques to reduce the amount of information we put on a listing page of complex content types. And we can reduce the information and then present the information in a way that's easier for the user to scan, understand. The other kind of direction we should be thinking with complex content types is what style of list we're using. Drupal in particular gives us this wonderful views module, which is a great tool for creating a whole bunch of different kinds of list styles. The first one we're going to go take a look at is the one we've been looking at before. This is the A to Z list. The A to Z list lists every single research database on the site. It's a very long page. There's pluses and minuses to that. It can take a long time to load depending on somebody's internet connection. On the other hand, once it's loaded, you have access to every title on the site. You can use a find and page to jump down to one that you're interested in. And you also have these anchor tags up here that will pop you down to a section so you can scan by alphabetical letter too. So this is a great tool for users who have a sense of the name of what they're looking for, or think if they look at the name it will jog their memory. It's not a great tool for people who have really no idea what your resources represent. And how they should think about which resources might be relevant to them. A better tool for a user who really isn't familiar with the content and needs a little help to understand it is exposed filters, and I have that loaded here in this view. Exposed filters is a Drupal term that refers to these filters we see at the top of the page. Research databases have a couple of categorization schemes. They have a type, and they have a subject. And if we break these out as two different drop-downs, then we can allow a user to filter down into our set of information and find the resources that are relevant to them. So they can request only the databases that pertain to biographies. And this can be a really valuable thing, particularly for students who know they're supposed to be looking for resources in a given area. This can be a really helpful way for them to find the ones that are relevant to them without being overwhelmed by way too many choices. Another list type that Drupal makes available to us is to actually pre-create a list and then present it to our users via the menu. And to illustrate that, let's go to my third tab here. We determined that a very helpful list to our users was the thesis and dissertation list of resources. So this was pulled out, created as a separate list, and then put into the menu, so it's like a permanent filter almost. And there are quite a few of the menu items here in the left-hand column represent these permanent filters of lists that we feel will be useful over a long period of time to our users. And I'm guessing that you will know the next thing I am going to say is that that can also be tested. So any of these, any of the choices that we make and how we present information can be tested in a variety of ways. And I definitely recommend when you're trying to tackle a complex challenge like presenting this information that you really subject whatever method you come up with to periodic testing. So everything we've talked about so far has been about how we present complex content to users who are coming to look for it. So we have a user on our site, They're coming to look at what events we have. They're coming to look at which faculty are in a particular department. They're interested in doing some research and are coming to look at what research databases we have available. These are users who know they want something. And an equally important challenge is helping users who don't even know that they should be interested in some information we have. And this is a challenge I'm very passionate about. I think that Drupal in particular, because of the power of its taxonomy and views module, gives us a really great opportunity to make related content blocks that can shine a light on some of our content and really hide and really sort of expose hidden content that we've put a lot of resources in as an institution to make research databases available. The service catalog in our IT department, a lot of effort goes into making that an appropriate list of services for the members of our higher ed community, and being able to really internally promote or almost market our resources to our users is a really great tool, and I would love to see it used more. So let's talk a little bit about how we can do that. First, let me show you an example of it. And I just want to say this is an example, this is an example of a related content block that I built on my local copy of the Northeastern University Library site. It is not on the production site that we built in January, but if any Northeastern University Library people are listening, feel free to let me know and I'll send you the view, because I think this is a pretty cool addition to the site. So what this is, it's a page from the site that is illustrating an event. This is the Meet the Author event. As you can tell from the text, it has something to do with sports. So what I've done here is added a sidebar block over in the right-hand column. It's a research databases sidebar block created by the Views module that picks one research database from that incredibly long list. It picks one research database to put on this page. In this case, it's picking one that pertains to sport. Here is another example. It's a event that pertains to mapping science. So the Drupal, through the magic of its taxonomy and also just random selection, has picked a Oxford Encyclopedia of Evolution research database to put on this page. And as you can tell, we're not looking here for an exact match. The idea is not to find the precise research database that exactly matches the event. The idea is to take a broader sense and say, somebody who's looking at this page has an interest in science, so let's put on the page a research database that pertains to science and try if we can pique their interest to get a chance for them to click through and learn more about it. It's really an advertisement. So there's 3 steps we have to do to make this happen. The first step is creating a site-wide vocabulary, and this is used to connect content across the site. There's a whole bunch of different ways to approach this. It's really, you can use a trial and error method. You can put a lot of effort into thinking what the terms are. What you want to wind up with is a list of terms that do a pretty good job of encompassing all the information across your site, that pull together things like events and blog posts and press releases and faculty with their research interests and research databases. The more you can connect these types of content, the more success you will have in making these related content blocks. So here's an example of the detailed subjects vocabulary on the Northeastern University Library site. It's a bunch of terms that are used to describe many types of content on the site, and it's the connection vocabulary that I used to create the research databases related content block. The next step in the process after creating a site-wide vocabulary is to actually build the block itself. I'll use the Views module to build the block that will be displayed on a single node page. Single node page is Drupalese for a single piece of content. It would be a single event, a single faculty member. We're going to be tagging our events with terms and then pulling in a block based on those terms. So this, yeah, I think I have it in the web browser. Yes, this is the view that's actually used to create the block. And actually, before we look at that, let's take a look at the block one more time to kind of orient ourselves. So just to remind you, the view is creating the sidebar block on the right-hand side. That's the chunk of content that starts with research databases and ends with see all research databases. It has a title, it has some intro text, it has a research database, and then it has a link on the bottom. And we can see how the view works to create all of those pieces of the block. It has the title and the intro text actually come here from the header, and then the footer is where we get the see all link. The title of the research database comes from the field, and this is where we tell Drupal what we'd like it to display. We want it to display published resources. We don't want to display any unpublished resources. Those aren't for the public to see. And the only content type we wanted to show is resource. This is a related content block to highlight our resources, which is what we call research databases in this project. You'll notice that the sort order is random. That's very important. The success of related content, what gives it that serendipitous feel, is a combination of intelligence and randomness. The intelligence is the taxonomy that makes the connections, and the randomness is the picking of the object within the filtered possibilities. So we take our whole list of research databases, we narrow it down to just the ones that pertain to sports, and from within the ones that pertain to sports, we make a random choice. And sometimes that random choice is going to be awesome and let a user, encourage a user to click through and find out more. So the first two columns are, you can see, are about how we actually construct the block, how we put the elements on the page, and how we pick at a kind of a big level what kind of objects we want to list. It's the Advanced tab where we get into the very specific filter that allows us to relate this research database to the particular event that we're on. It's called a contextual filter because it depends on the context of the page itself. The event reports to Drupal, I am an event about sports, and this is where Drupal has the functionality to read that information in. It reads in the fact that it's about sports and goes into its research database list and picks out all the research databases that pertain to sports and picks a random one. That magic where it reads from the page and picks one that matches is what a contextual filter is all about. Okay, so we've talked about the first two steps of created related content block. First, writing the vocabulary. Second, using the views module to create the actual block itself. The third step is using the context module to place the block on the page. We want that block to be on an event page. So we use the context module to say, context module, just to take a step back, it's a great module. I don't think we really create a Drupal site that doesn't use it. It's basically a set of triggers, a set of conditions, and a set of reactions. The condition is something like, I am on an event page. And the reaction is something like, show the related content block. The conditions part of the configuration can be see here, where we're checking off I am on an event page. And the reaction can be see here, where we say put a related content block in the right-hand sidebar. Together, between the condition and the reaction, we're making sure that the related content block is only shown on event pages. So just to recap what we've been covering today, we are taking a look at some of the solutions we can have for the challenge that we often see in higher ed websites of complex content types. Universities often find themselves with lots of really rich and awesome content that unfortunately is difficult for our users to understand. But we find that if it's well architected and designed, we can make it easier for our users. We can make it easier for them to understand what the resources are that we have available. And the two methods that we discussed for achieving that were targeted listing pages, presenting these resources, these content types on lists, and the various kinds of lists that help users find the relevant content. And then the second piece, which is the one I'm really passionate about, is using these related content blocks to allow for serendipitous discovery.
Okay, well, thank you, Lisa. Let's take a look at some of the questions that came through during the webinar. It looks like we have several here around the research databases. The first question is the content of the research databases page, so title, subject, etc., entered into the Drupal database, or is that being pulled from another data source?
That actually, those are Drupal controlled content. So there is a content type. Let's see if we can pull it up live. There is a content type called research database, or resource, I think in this case. And let's take a look at its fields. That has various fields that are used to separate out the information, chunk it out. And so Drupal completely owns this information, and that's why, that's one of the reasons why it has a very easy time listing it and presenting it in various views.
Okay. You showed us lists of research databases, but are research databases ever displayed as single items on their own page?
Oh, okay. Yeah, they are actually, and I loaded up in my browser. I thought somebody might want to see that. So here is a reason that we need to present research databases on their own page, not just a listing page. And that's for the purpose of, well, I'm going to cover two reasons. One is search, and the other is the related content blocks. So if a user searches for something like dissertations, when they get a very typical Drupal search results page, what do they expect will happen if they click on a particular research database in this list? What they expect is that they will go to a page that describes the research database itself. So in terms of the normal sort of menu structure of the site, or in terms of the normal pathways that users will take, it's not important to present a research database as a standalone item. The only two use cases that were worth mentioning are the search results page, and then also if we go back to the this picture here, if a user were to click on the sport discus with full text, in this case a user would expect that to go to the a similar full page explanation of that research database. Now that's my guess, but so I would definitely want to subject that to testing, but that's what I would think. Somebody would expect that link to go to the single node page or the full page result for that database.
Okay, excellent. Another question. When you set up a taxonomy for related content blocks, is it okay to adjust the vocabulary, add terms, etc.?
That's a tricky question. I definitely believe in the power of evolution. I think that when we create something ahead of time and really kind of set up a very firm structure, we can get pretty close to an ideal solution, but it'll be even better if we let it evolve over time and grow with our site, grow with our increased understanding, grow as we subject our site to testing. So I do think that you have to allow a taxonomy to change. However, I don't believe it's a good idea to allow it to change willy-nilly. You want to lock down which users on your site have the ability to create new terms, remove terms. If you, when we come to a site that has too free access to these kinds of vocabularies, what we see are just horrible beasts of vocabularies with duplicated terms, terms that are spelled differently but mean the same things, and that becomes very difficult for our content creators. If you think about when somebody's creating an event on our site, and we want, this may not be somebody who's trained or somebody who's passionate about the taxonomy on our website, they're just somebody whose job it is to enter an event. We want this to be very easy for our users. If they're presented with a list of 300 taxonomy terms that are duplicates of another and a very confusing mishmash of terms, their job becomes harder. They'll do not as thoughtful a job of tagging their content. So we need to have some oversight of the taxonomy list, but we also still need to allow it to grow and change as we understand our site more.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like that is it for questions that have come through right now. Lisa, I'm actually going to ask you, instead of switching screens again, if you don't mind just forwarding to the last slide in the presentation for today, just so folks can see how to contact us.
I think I just displayed my my lack of PowerPoint expertise.
It happens to all of us.
We're going to go through the entire presentation.
Okay.
So this is going to be like a this is the quick version of what the presentation was.
It's a review. It's just a review.
It's a review. I did. Here's the last slide.
There we go. All right. So certainly if any of you have any further questions, anything else you think of, feel free to reach out to us. And I also just want to thank Lisa for a great presentation today, and thank all of you for joining us. So we'll be posting the slides of this presentation on our blog, which you see here is interactivity.ifactory.com. We'll post those later today, and then tomorrow you'll be able to find recording on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/iFactoryBoston. So as I think many of you know, this is the second webinar in a three-part series. So the final webinar will take place on Tuesday, May 1st, again at same time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard, and we'll send and post an invite to that later this week, because we hope that all of you will be able to join us. So thanks again, Lisa, and have a great day, everyone.